Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. So glad to have you guys back and following the Trump news cycle. We call this series the Orders and Actions of Trump. Trump's orders and actions, where we are decoding them. You may see things that are going on that news or your alt media channels you listen to aren't telling you. Now, a lot of the people here on the site have been with us for several years, so they know the history of things. When we talk about the treasonous crimes of James Comey, well, our group already knows those crimes, and we've been over them many times. But if you haven't been with us and you find this information overwhelming, please go to ourspirit.com. And right there in the center of the page, we have a free download book. Now, if you download the whole thing, it's going to be about 600 gigabytes. It increases all the time. And this is where we placed all of these articles and reports that we were doing over the years. We put them in PDF form so that you can download them and share them, and we aren't going to lose them just because my sites get wiped off. So do your civic duty and get in there and get a copy of the book, and then follow along the best you can. And when you have questions, please ask them in the comments section, because a lot of folks here are very knowledgeable and they can answer the question. Without further ado, Douglas says he's been looking at the news today and has a lot to say.
Well, Betsy, in our decoding of Trump orders and actions, he just said to the Republicans in the House, he was giving them a speech, went on for quite a while. I like to call him the president of the run-on sentence, who has never seen a period in his life, only semicolons. And, his asides are enough to just blow your mind. So our job is to try to interpret for you things he says that you go, huh? What? What was that? Okay, so we said 2 days ago, a lot of our subscribers said, what's the deal with this, Altman and OpenAI and $500 billion for AI? And I explained what, parts of it were, but, now I did the real research, but only after, because I didn't get the insider information that Pelosi got. So she withdrew from NVIDIA $1.3 or $1.4 million 2 days before China announces this thing called DeepSeek, which makes ChatGPT look bad, and their promotions, which are always lies, say that it's light years ahead of it because they use a new laser based integrated chip and circuits and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm going to explain that because I didn't understand why Trump had freaked out over this, why these people were all freaking out, and why Moshe, from SoftBank wanted to give $100 billion and then turned around and wanted to give $500 billion all of a sudden. Days before, NASDAQ lost 3% because China came out and put on top of the Google apps, beating ChatGPT is now DeepSeek. Now, let me explain that. DeepSeek is one of these, I don't know if people understand this. ChatGPT or anything like that is nothing more than a group of central processors that do distillation from a large language model. So whatever you think ChatGPT can do, it is still limited by what humans have put into the large language model that it's extracting and distilling its information from. But China wants to say that DeepSeek can reason. No, it can't. It can use machine language to make choices of things that already exist. It doesn't create out of nothingness like a human mind can do. No, we're never going to be at that point. So what we see now is what we had predicted about 3 years ago, I think it was, it was 2020, 4 years ago. When this came out, I said, this is the beginning of the end. China came out and said that they had a thing called Open Atom, ATOM, and that they were going to be so generous to let every single inventor, including, the Israeli Talpiot and all in Silicon Valley and all of everyone gets to give China a copy of all of their research, and they are going to be so nice. They're going to coordinate it for us. And then make it completely for the sake of all of humanity. It's going to be for our good and our security and our advancement. No, as I told you then, it was nothing more than a system to steal patents before they're patents. So before someone goes to the trouble to make a patent and, proof of concept and all that stuff, no, China sends it there, had everyone working together because they were, because at that time, essentially, you could say that we had sold ourselves completely back out to China again, right? Even though, as I've pointed out many times, and now we know, China is collapsing. Its economy is gone to the dogs. It's the floods that happened there. They don't have power for manufacturing. Their banks have collapsed. It's a mess. Same thing with Russia. But anyway, the point is, that's why Trump did what he did. And Trump is always going to be number one, no matter what. So when somebody said to him a couple days ahead, insider trading information, or for him, national security, this is a national security issue, and Pelosi got the information, sold NVIDIA, because NVIDIA is the American company that makes chips that support Altman's OpenAI and ChatGPT and all the things that come out of it, which are many, many, many things, many applications come out of that. So what he basically said is, looks like China somehow jumped ahead of us. And he said in his speech to the Republicans in the House, he insinuated, you can't trust anything with China. And then he goes into this long thing about the deal he had with China and the way that he didn't say it bluntly, but the way that they even ripped him off. They even tricked him. Well, they tricked us again, because they're lying, as always. So DeepSeek is not going to be what they say it is. That's just a fact. Neither was Lenovo or anything the Chinese have ever put out. And they're sneaking it in the country without sanctions through Alibaba and Tencent and other ways. And the owner, supposedly who invented this just out of the blue, is actually has, I think, is centering his company so that it has can't have American sanctions on it. So what Trump was doing there, that was actually a national security issue. And he basically, if somebody comes to Trump and says, the Russians have hypersonic missiles. Now, if Trump didn't know that we gave them the hypersonic missiles through Raytheon, through the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, then the first thing he's going to say is, well, we're going to make bigger ones and better ones. And we have, because we're the ones who invented it. We invent all this stuff. As China says, they don't have the inventors. So they created a system of basically just stealing this information under the auspices of open source, called Open Source Atom. And now they turn around and they, of course, screw America.
Okay, so basic thing here. We know that they want to turn us into transhumans, and they want AI to run our government, and they want everything digitalized. But the big trade-off for that is that human beings then begin to lose their ability for creative thinking, imagination, innovation. That only comes from a person who is free to use their mind and free to move about. But when you're living a totalitarian situation like in China, their people can't be imaginative. And so what do? They have to steal from the U.S. Patent Office. So they have set up this elaborate system of stealing, like Michael McKibben and Leader Technologies. I believe that the aha moment for Michael in creating social networking was really about him opening up to a spiritual world, a spiritual portal that reached down and could only touch someone who was as, I don't know, it sounds corny, but it is, as godly and as religious as Michael is. And so that connection that was made, that spark of creativity, led to Leader Technologies inventing social networking. Well, the enemies of our world couldn't have that. I mean, the enemy to Michael personally was James P. Chandler III, who stole it in a very sneaky way, and then he went out and said it's open source. So he threw it out so all the vultures could get pieces of it, spread it all over the world. I always thought that that would be the Achilles heel of taking down this military industrial complex that we see by giving Michael the rightful. He already owns the technology, but paying him for what the government ripped off, and then putting harnesses, restraints on the people that use this technology by writing terms of service that if you want to use AI and it's parked on this technology, which it is, then you can't spy on people, you can't collect their data, you can't surveil, or whatever else they have planned for us with this.
The Chinese company called Open Atom, when it first announced itself, Michael and I gave it the name actually, IBM Eclipse Foundation 2.0, because it was only made to steal patents and steal ideas, period. And to give it to who? Well, at that time, and remember, since the Clintons and even Nixon, we've given our manufacturing to China. We don't, and Trump in this talk to the Republicans basically said that's all ended. I'm reducing the taxes for anyone who wants to manufacture in this country down to 15. And he also insinuated that there'll be no taxes on the people. There's just going to be the external revenue service because he can produce enough money to take care of that. We've just seen in the last days, I stopped counting at about 4 or 5 trillion that he made in just the decisions. 350. He made 350 orders, or not just executive orders and directives and pronouncements and other things, but all the different orders that he's given. And sometimes, because there's a little pushback on some of them, he has to turn around and give other orders to reinforce them. And so he's attacked so many fronts all at once that essentially they can't resist because they don't have creativity, intelligence. They can't think on their feet. The people he is fighting are the people who are devolving into animal humans, who wish to put their own personal concerns above even the nation that they live in, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, anything, and then to absolutely be completely made into thoughtless creatures. Fluoridization, a chlorinization of the brain, chloride in the brain, fluoride in the brain, all the different metals we're putting into the brain. People can't think anymore, and they're being bombarded with it all the time. So he is dealing with the greatest egotism ever seen in human history, and so that's why he turns out to look like a complete narcissist, because he has to be. Because when you look at everyone in D.C., every one of those people, almost every single one of them, is a greedy, demon-possessed egotist. Now, there might be a couple who aren't. He went through the list of all the Republicans in the room and could only name a couple nice people, which was pretty amazing. And some of the people who we know are evil, he also said, they're nice people, they're good people.
Well, let's move on. Some other items that caught my attention is him saying that, these countries that sent their illegal criminals and aliens to us, you need to take them back. And a couple of countries have balked at that, and Trump has pulled out his big stick, and, they changed their mind within 30 minutes. But he also said within that if these countries won't take these people back, that he's going to have to ask maybe a third country to take them in for a fee. And that reminded me of those days where we all talking about prison ships. Well, why not just put them all in a big boat and cast them out to sea? And then others said, hey, how about building an open air prison up somewhere in the Antarctica? Well, why not Greenland, somewhere up there? It would be like America's Siberia, or find a remote island in the Pacific that they couldn't swim from, because it's just actually genius. All these criminals came to America, and now we have them all here. And then alpha male Holman, I love him, baby. I just love him and his energy. He's going to round them up. So he's really rounding them up for the whole world. Well, let's not just take them back to their countries. Let's just put them someplace and keep the whole world safe. So I'm liking this idea, Mr. President Trump, just as much as I like the idea of having California. You want federal money, we need to have voter ID and paper ballots. And in fact, we need to have that in all federal elections. We've gone through too many elections now to see that the rigging is just rampant, whether it's Optech or AI or the Crown agents doing their thing. We just need for federal elections voter ID, paper ballots. Now that will trickle down to the states and locals doing it. But, as long as it's for the federal government, I would be very happy with that. What do you say to those two things, Doug?
Well, first off, the leftist socialist leader of Colombia just got bitch slapped by Trump so bad that they're considering impeaching him, and they had to send up a special commission to apologize to Trump for him saying he wouldn't take his criminals that he let out of jail. And remember, these are war actors, and remember, we are now at war with anyone who sends war actors to our southern or northern border, okay? We are at war. We are in a national emergency. The Army has never been allowed to act on the orders of the president, the commander-in-chief within our own domestic borders. Sorry, it's happening. We're going to see a war. But you know what? I don't care how many people have to die on their side of the border, because literally I stopped counting at about 1 million people who they already have killed at the southern border, all supported by Mexico, Colombia, Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica. All of them, Guatemala, all these countries send their criminals to us to do what? To destabilize us, to sell drugs in our country, to basically overthrow the country, break down the borders so that anyone can come in. And Trump, in his speech, he says, tariffs is his most favorite word. He's now changed it. He said he had to. It's God, family, religion, then tariffs. But tariffs are the trick here, and you get to see the exodus out of America of all these people who he's basically said, if I catch you, you can't ever come back. You can't even apply to come back for 20 years. And the issue of DACA, incidental issue, except that, remember, the DACA children are now adults, and they've committed crimes, so they can still be removed because they have never registered. So if they get a driver's license and they vote, that is a felony for against a person. Every DACA person that votes, and most of them do, and they take the Social Security numbers of dead people, and they work, they pay taxes, we give them tax refunds. It's like, we know who they are. How do you think they are gathering up all these criminals? They knew who every single one of them were, but because of sanctuary cities and because of liberal, pathetic politicians saying that they're going to just keep releasing these people and not let the police or the ICE or anyone know, they just gather them up, multiple. So Trump is saying, oh, the head of Colombia got mad because they were in handcuffs. He says every person that we sent to Colombia, those are the worst people. There's like 8,000 people that were sent out that day, and a couple of the planes didn't make it to Colombia. Now they're sending a plane up to get them. Well, they'll be in handcuffs when they pick them up here too, because why? These are murderers. These are drug lords, drug kingpins. These are the worst of the worst. Trump has made a commitment to the Republicans. He says he's given the order. We will have 1,200 deportations of the highest criminals down to the lowest every single day that I'm president, minimum. And he says right now, no one is coming across the border. And then he, that picture they always show of the thousands, 10,000 people gathering in this field in Tijuana, and then they just come pouring across the border when it's night or when, whatever. He says there's not one single person in that field, not one. And so you have then these Central and South American countries' leadership basically freaking out because they can't last for 10 minutes without American support in Colombia or anywhere else. And remember, this is a war against these countries that are run by cartels, drug cartels who send drugs across our border to kill our people, and murderers. So there's going to be a lot of death, okay? But the bodies are going to fall on the Mexican side of that southern border.
Yeah, and let me just also add that Trump was also talking about removing American criminals as well, serial criminals, and putting them on this off-site.
Greenland, just as
yes,
you said.
well, I know he may have insinuated Greenland, but think about Siberia. Those were open air prisons. I mean, if you escape, where are you going to go? This is what we need to do with these people. These are people, human beings that they didn't quite make the cut. The rest of us are evolving. We're moving on, and we're just going to have to leave them behind. But another thing that got me excited, and I'm really glad to see it, is how he's going to deal with Europe. And he's not going to deal with the European Union directly, he said, with deals. He's going to deal with each country. So this is fantastic. And when I see that, I see that the United Kingdom, which is the home of the City of London and old King Fat Fingers and the Pilgrim Society, I see he's isolating the United Kingdom, because he can now do deals with Denmark separately from Romania, and maybe with the United Kingdom, because they they are in such deep caca, I'm telling you, from all the history that we've drug up about the British Imperial Empire and their involvement in COVID, which the CIA is still hiding. Oh, Ratcliffe coming out. Oh, yes, the origins were in Wuhan, China. No, buddy, you need to go back and do some more digging. You're going to find it right there in Purbright, the United Kingdom. But anyway, with this move saying we're only going to do deals country by country, it starts to bring back the sovereignty of these nations and get them out from under the European Union, which was a huge mistake for freedom and I will use the word democracy in the general sense for the European people. Instead, European Union taking over them, overrunning the place with illegals, people that are nowhere near European culture. It's just been a big mess. So I'm really excited to see that. And I know it's kind of rambly about it, but it isolates the United Kingdom so that if Trump wants to put 60% tariffs on them because of whatever they might have done, it'll be more easily done and not affect the other countries.
I'm so glad you brought up the marauding Vikings. When you go to Britain, Germany, or France, who are those? Those are marauding Vikings. They never lost. Why? Because they were bigger than everybody else. They attacked before the mist rose and they could see in the mist. And they raped and pillaged worse than anyone. They took over all of the houses of Europe. Now, what's happening in today's age? Oh, same exact thing. You have the climate change nonsense of King Fatfingers saying he wants, trillions of dollars more. Well, first off, show me where any of that money went already. I have never seen one single penny ever spent on climate and the climate myth. And AOC and her Green New Deal, he basically made fun of her, saying that she was a bad student. She knows nothing. How could this even happen? And it's gone. And anyone who believes in that is basically stupid. Now, if you believe in the British being our friend, then you have not studied history. You need to go to the book Tyler talked about at ourspirit.com and look at The Truth Will Set You Free, the truth history book that we put together, which is the most profound indictment of this evil that you will ever come across in any book anywhere, let alone all in one place, for free. So, and you can Google anything search anything you want on it and find out. So if you want to say King Charles and you want to find out all the dirt on King Charles, just plug in his name. You will have more to read than you can read.
And it's not just because, McKibben would push back on it. It's not dirt. It's actual court-recognized indictable evidence that's stamped, documented, and sealed, or, to exaggerate a bit. But it is a fantastic way to get started on relearning, because we all have to re-educate ourselves about the truth of our world history.
America never came into existence. It was a stillbirth, and we have been bloodletted all this time by the vampires of Europe, and particularly Britain, particularly the British Pilgrim Society, starting with Cecil Rhodes and his 3 Rothschild overlords, into our present day. So what did Britain do? Britain started the war in Ukraine. Don't forget, the war in Donbass was over after Kiev and the Ukrainians killed 100,000 of their own people with ammunition from America. Those were our artillery rounds that they were killing their own people with. That's when Russia came in. The real war started with the British commandos exploding the southern pipeline of Belarus and one of the pipelines leading into Ukraine, and later they did the same thing on a second pipeline. And of course, I've gone into all that history, but the Brits are always there. They've already sent a brigade. Some say 5,000, some say 50,000. They just sent an entire 5,000 brigade there, but some say there was already 45,000 troops there. And so basically the British went to Estonia, the Germans went to, let's see if I get this right, Germans went to Latvia, and the French went to Lithuania, something like that. Anyway, in between those three Baltic countries, which border Russia and Belarus, they want to start the war. They've already tried again and again false flags in Poland, where missiles dropped in Poland that were supposedly from Russia. No, incorrect. They tried to cut They did. They cut the Nord Stream 1 and 2 Russian oil into Germany, giving Germany the secret control of the what was it, 60% of all the oil in Europe was coming through Germany from Russia in Nord Stream 1, and Germany never told the EU about it. That's why the EU doesn't exist anymore. They realized they got screwed. Okay, Nord Stream 2, same thing. Who blew them up? The British and the Germans. Who blew up the recent cable line in the Baltic? That would be the same people. Now, what are we seeing? We're seeing the same old thing. We're seeing a treaty that everyone forgets what the tenets of the treaty are. And then when the time comes for an event, when the false flag happens, all of a sudden you go, oh, sorry, we got to do it. Hey, it's on the treaty. World War I, World War II. All these false wars that the British started with false flags, with bad intelligence, and with, acting like we still have to be the white supremacist imperialists of the world, following the model of the British East India Company. No, we don't. Corporatism is what has led us into all these modern wars through the Brits, through the City of London. Trace it back. If you don't believe me, go look at the indictable evidence that we provided for you. So what we really have going on here is Trump is going to have to sever himself from NATO. And I said in all directions now, because I see him going back and adding reinforced orders and what are we calling them? Orders and actions. He's reinforcing all his orders and actions. Sometimes in a conversation, he walks off the podium. He described one thing, and that's why I know to look at Deep Seek, because he made an aside that he walked off the podium, said something to somebody, and that's what launched him into America's going to have to be the greatest AI, because he just heard the rumor that this was going to come out. At the same time, Pelosi did, and she made $1 million, sold $1.3 or $1.4 million worth in the video. She should go to jail along with her husband. But anyway, so he heard it in one remark that he makes to somebody, which then gets him $500 billion and the ability to use that as a leverage point, not only with TikTok and who he's going to sell TikTok to, but the Panamanian Canal. He has China so over the barrel, I can't even believe it. And now this brought out what we predicted in 2020. Go back, you can look it up. We have it on video, that China would attempt to steal all secrets except for Talpiot coming out of Israel, steal all American secrets for advanced technology, and then say they're ahead of us. Look now everywhere. What do you see? New chips being created. Who created them? Chinese. And what are they supposedly running? The quantum computers. Have you not seen this all over the internet? Quantum computers. Everybody's claiming they have quantum computers. Nobody has a quantum computer. Nobody has artificial intelligence. Period. I predict it will never come into existence. Those are the dreams of scientists who promised us that atomic energy would make us have free electricity. How'd that work out?
And I still go back to this. I see all of this, and I see how it could be connected to smart cities, and that they're going to need the computation ability process everything that has to be processed in the smart city concept. I see that happening and the dangers, but then I also know that AI isn't really what they say it is. I mean, for example, they haven't even loaded up our truth history book into Chat GPT or DeepSeek. Once they do, that changes the whole narrative and the outcomes of what is being said. So it's incomplete. But what it kind of interests me is that each of these centers will have to build a power center next to them. And that is what I see of value, because once these companies go bankrupt or those buildings are abandoned, we still have these places with energy sources. Now, I think that's. Oh, did you want to say something about that?
I want to say that the myth of science is now turned into a religion that they call scientism. And every religion has to have revelations, don't they? So the myth dash techno revelation that there will be a super AI is completely demon words. It ain't going to happen, folks, because humans aren't going to allow it. And the integration of these very, very basic subnatural integrated circuits, and that's it. Oh, what is that? That's the bastardization of silica. Well, you can use silica for all kinds of things without having to use electromagnetism. And so what is going on here is really, this is a battle between one religion and the other. The religion of those who believe that humans will become angels, and the unwitting religion of those who are becoming animal humans. And this is the battle that Trump is fighting. If you haven't noticed, take a look at the people coming across our southern border. Many of them are not human. Those are the locust people. Those are the reptilians. Those are the people who don't use major parts of their brain or don't have a soul and might not have a spirit at all. And so we're dealing with actually an attack on all fronts, from demonically possessed people. And if you don't know what that is, go to Washington, D.C. That stands for Demon Central, because that's where the demons really live, in Washington, D.C., New York, and in Hollywood. And that's the reason Hollywood's all the orbs are dropping down. Those are vehicles for the angels and the whole hierarchy. And they're dropping down to say to us, hey, you think you're so smart? You can build a hypersonic missile, but you can't catch a plasma ball. Never have you? No, plasma balls come down, they dance, they go out into space. They dance around the International Space Station. And what do we do about it? Nothing. Because there's forces in the world and in the cosmos and in your own human body that are beyond any of the artificial intelligence, mythological, supposed revelations, or any of the great quantum computers that are coming to save us. No, they're not. Machines will simply be turned off by humans unless they can be started for a moral reason in the future.
Well, before we get too far, we'll close this off because that's going to be the topic of our next video. Douglas has been doing some amazing research on plasma and these light orbs and all the things he just talked about. So we'll see you in the next video.